Oh, wow. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Alyssa Karpinka, and I am the event coordinator for Macdonald Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. Tonight's event is coming to you from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of Blow Wind by Daniel Macdonald, with music by Eileen Laverty. Thank you to Daniel and Eileen for being here tonight. And I'd also like to thank Playwrights Canada Press and especially Jessica Lewis and Annie Gibson for working with us to create this event. I'll briefly introduce our guests this evening. Eileen Laverty's family emigrated to Canada from Belfast when she was 6, and while she calls herself a prairie girl, her Irish roots run deep. Over the past 2 decades, Laverty has entertained audiences of all ages as a solo performer and with her band. She has performed alongside such artists as the late Kenny Rogers, Tom Cochrane, Mary Black, John McDermott, and Ian Tyson, and is a frequent guest of the Saskatoon Symphony Orchestra. She loves the outdoors, and many of her songs were composed in and around the northern forests and rivers of Saskatchewan. She lives in Saskatoon. Daniel Macdonald is an award-winning playwright, and teacher, and his plays have been produced across Pulse Hospital with the Healing Arts. Voices Playwriting Circle. Introduce us and more welcome.
Far away. Well, hello. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And thank you so much to everyone who is here. I really appreciate you being here at this. I've never done a book launch before. I've had books launched, but never done a book launch. So this is pretty cool and new to me too. So it's so thank you for being here. I especially want to thank Macdonald Robinson and Alyssa for all of her work, and of course my publisher, Playwrights Canada Press, and of course my partner in crime here, Eileen Laverty, who will come up in a bit. If you can't guess already, she's going to play some tunes. So we'll get to that. So here's how this is going to go down. I'm going to talk a little bit about where the play came from and why, and I'm going to read a scene from the play Blow Wind. And then Eileen is going to come up and do a song. And then we have a special guest, Marcel Petit, who was the originator of the character Tom in the original production, who's going to come up and do a monologue from the play as Tom. And then Eileen is going to come back and sing one more song, and then we'll be done. And if you have questions, if you'd like to chat about the play or I don't know stuff, we can do a Q&A, or you can just hang out and do that. Eileen and I are also going to sign any books that you want signed. So thank you so much. So really briefly, the play came from conversations that I had with Angus Ferguson and Sky Brandon several years ago through Dancing Sky Theatre. Angus and I have been colleagues for many years, and he and I have always talked about collaborating on something or developing something, and it just never happened. And then Sky was general manager there at the time, and Sky and I started conversations about possibilities. And so a commission to write a play began, and I already had a couple of ideas in my head. So I kind of threw the ideas at these individuals, and they were excited about the premise for the play. There was an episode of This American Life that I heard one day, quite a long time ago. And on it, there was a story about a family and a woman who had begun to suffer from dementia. And the family really didn't know how to deal with it, in part because there was a resistance to the resistance on their part to the change that was happening in her. And so in many, many cases, the family would simply be saying, no, mom, this is not what's the reality right now. This is what we're doing. This is not what you think it is, that kind of thing. And all it led to was frustration, anxiety, and stress on everyone's part. And one of the sons decided to do something a little different and just go along with what the mom wanted or was thinking, because the consequences of it were almost nil. So the idea of just going with what mom was taking in her world, or what mom believed her world to be at that moment, was what he decided to do. This caused friction in the family because they, for quite some time, they didn't really appreciate what he was doing, but it did relieve a lot of stress and anxiety on everyone's part over time. I loved this premise, and I especially loved the theatrical possibilities of it. There was so much in there that was rife with interesting imagery on stage. And so I began to riff on that. I also combined the part of the story of King Lear in the play. If you think about King Lear, it's just a family arguing over land. And so I took the King Lear premise and started to throw it into the idea of the matriarch of a family farm, who is beginning to suffer from dementia, and what the family is trying to do in the event of her demise. And so that's kind of the premise of the play. This scene is very early in the play. In fact, it's essentially the first scene of the play. There's a prologue prior to this. And even though Kathleen, the matriarch of the family farm, the father, her husband is dead, even though she is the central character, the story goes through the eyes of her daughter, Sarah. In this scene, Sarah has just returned from being estranged from the family for some time, or at least distant from the family in Ontario, and has come home unannounced, basically, and has said, "Here I am, I'm back." And this scene, she goes out looking for her mom, who happens to be standing in the middle of a field on their farm, yelling to a storm. So I'm just going to take a little water here. So in the original production, in fact, both productions, we had a production at Dancing Sky and then a production at Station Arts Theatre in Rostern. In both productions, the actors made the storm sounds. So I'm going to get you guys to do the storm sounds. So we're going to do a little rehearsal where I'm just going to point and get you all to make storm sounds. Thunder, light, just let me make a sound. It's thunder, lightning, rain, wind. And I'll just point, and then I'll go like this for you to stop abruptly, because that's essentially what happens in the play. Are we ready? Okay, 3, 2. Good enough. Okay. All right. So I will actually point to you and get you to do that at a certain point, and the characters end up having to yell over this storm for a short period of time. So Sarah, the daughter, she's the youngest in the family, introduces various characters and then introduces her mom, who appears on stage. Thank you for the water. Not you. All right. Over there is my mom, Kathleen. Kathleen starts yelling and flailing her arms. Blow, winds! Blow, rant, rage! Sarah shouts over Kathleen's rants. And on the day I come back, I find her standing in a field on the back quarter of our farm, yelling with all her might into a ferocious, thundering storm. What'd you say, storm? I can't hear you. Shout louder. Thunder, is that all you got? You think you can beat me? This is the storm that my mom is screaming at as I stand not 10 yards away, trying to get her attention. Thunderous noise, lightning, buckets of rain. But this is what was really there. beautiful sunny day in October. Quiet. Barely a breeze. A field in the middle of the day on our family farm. Both of us standing in thick gray clumps of hardened soil, and my mom yelling to the heavens. You can throw anything at me. I won't go down. Come on, then, try. Come and wash me down the back court of the farm and onto the road. Go ahead. Mom, is that what you want? Here I am. You think I can't handle this? Mom, are you okay? I don't want to see you right now. You've got some nerve. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. What? Why? What? You're going to take the farm from me too? Mom, Kathleen, go back to the house, Robert. Just go back to the house. Doesn't see me at all. She's seeing Robert, her dead husband, my dad. She's in the middle of a raging storm, a perilous night of her own creation. And I'm Robert. She sees Robert. To her, it looks something like this. Sarah then takes on Robert. Kathleen, are you okay? Leave me alone. Come on back to the house. You're worse than the wind. You're going to destroy this too. Kathleen, how could you do this, Robert? How could you? Sarah is closer now, but still Robert, comforting her. Shh, Kathleen. It's all washing away. All our work, all our Kathleen. It's me. Kathleen quiets and is breathing now as though she is somewhere between that world and this. She begins to listen. The sound's quiet. Sarah stays. Mom? What? You okay? Kathleen takes a long look at Sarah. You're not Robert? No, Mom. You're Sarah, Mom. I'm Sarah. I know who you are. Your daughter, Mom. I know, Sarah. A moment as Kathleen composes herself. She starts to realize she's not where or when she thought she was. She looks around. Kathleen looks at the sky, the land, trying to make sense of this. Mom, what? What? I said what? Are you okay? Are you okay? What? Nothing. Just my fine, honey. I'm looking at my fields. We're on a field in the back quarter, been fallow for a couple of years. 3. What? 3 years fallow. I was watching the fox. She's back. Started seeing her a few months ago. Her? I was following her, but I lost her. I think she went to the hill. Hill? A hill. I mean to the edge of the field. The aspens along the road. So I stopped here, remembering. I'm going to go across the field to the road. Sarah looks out. Oh, okay, I'll come with you. They don't move. When did you get back? Just now. You weren't at the house, so I was remembering that storm. That why you were shouting? What? Nothing. What storm? Kathleen looks around again. Not sure if I was in my right mind just now. When's anyone ever in the right mind, Mom? Kathleen looks at her daughter and smiles and warms up. You came back. Yeah. How are things? Okay. You sure you don't want to come back to the house? Maybe we can walk to the aspens tomorrow. Jolene's worried about you. Jolene's always worried about me. Well, she just wants to make sure there's one that's always in her right mind. Yeah, well, she's planning a supper. She tell you? I know, that's why we have, no, not for tonight, a supper. Like a feast supper, a dinner supper. This weekend. Steven's even coming. Oh, wow, like a dinner. Why is Steven coming? Why is she planning? Your father never planted enough aspens. Huh? Look, back toward the house, gaps along the lane. They're not spaced right, not even or something. Thank you. It is my great pleasure now to introduce Eileen Laverty, who's going to talk a bit about her role in all of this and to play a song.
Wow, that brings back a lot of great memories. So I have to say it was Angus Ferguson who called me up and I mean, I think Anguston is a legend. I just can't say enough about Angus without gushing. He's a gem of a man, and he's very passionate about theater, which is rivaled, I think, by his passion for music. So he's always looking for ways to bring the two together. And I was very fortunate that he thought of me for this project and introduced me to Dan and basically told us we're working together. So it was great. It's also fantastic because I had never had any experience in theater ever. So this was daunting for sure. I've always loved theater. I go to lots of plays and watch from the seat, but never ever been on stage. So in the original version, I think it's worth mentioning that Dan said, you know, we can do whatever, you know, we have a couple ways this could work. And I said, I'm all in. So he wrote me into the play. And so I was privileged. And I have to say, I really wanted to give a shout out to the original cast, Marcel and the wonderful group at Meacham, who invited me onto their stage literally and welcomed up, you know, opened up this beautiful space for me and this great experience, which I'm very grateful for. I loved every minute of it. The second production, though, I wasn't able to make it, and so Dan rewrote it one time. So he's reshaped the play, and it's beautiful. I just love what he's done and how he's moved the music onto the characters who are the ones singing. I also had some help from my friend Jesse Brown, who wasn't able to make it tonight, but he also helped me, you know, put a sparkle in a couple of the songs. So he's my songwriting partner in my partner in music, and my partner in music and my partner in life, Greg, who's here, also was very instrumental in helping me do the demos and get everything set up and gaining inspiration and my muse. So thanks, Greg, for all that you do as well. I have to tell you also, which was interesting, I was working as a full-time English teacher at the time, and so I'm grateful to the Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools. I was teaching at St. Jules, and my principal, Cheryl Thorson, we cut a deal. And I'm ever grateful to the board who let me take a leave to pursue this project. I just had to drive in. I was teaching the advanced English class and I had to drive in twice a week to teach a class for noon, then drive back out. So it's crazy, but fun. So yeah, and Dan, thank you so much, Dan, for sharing this creative journey and letting me be a part of your creative process as well. So it was wonderful. So this song I wrote, it's actually from the perspective of Sarah, who's watching her mother, as you just heard, just seeing her mother disappear for periods of time and wondering if she's going to come back and if she'll be okay. You seem to listen like angels are singing, secrets whispered, church bells ringing. No, I hear is the wind. Travel to places I don't understand, searching through time for a safe place to land. No, I hear is the wind. Oh, promises made. No, no, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, 'cause I'm always behind you. Like in the moment, and no love will guide you. I'll follow if you lead the way. All through a world that is moving too fast, fighting your way to a place in the past. It breaks my heart, open wide. The only thing that I can do when you leave is hope you'll come back, although time will deceive. Not be here by your side. Oh, promises made. No, no, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, 'cause I'm always behind you. But for the moment, I know love will guide you. I'll follow if you lead the way. Sometimes in life we forget where we're going. We lose ourselves without ever knowing. We cling to each moment, we try to remember, but memories fall like the leaves in September. I'll follow if you lead the way. I'll follow.
So just to elaborate really quickly on this partnership that we developed, I wrote a few drafts of the play, and then Angus said, oh, you remember we're going to have live musical accompaniment, which he insists on for all his productions. And then he told me who it was, and I was like, oh, she writes songs and she's a singer-songwriter. Does she want to write some songs for the play? And so that's really how I just assumed initially that it'd be just somebody doing, you know, underscoring musically and stuff like that. And it just grew into this really fantastic relationship and collaboration. I'm just so grateful for Eileen's friendship. One of the hilarious things is we're both high school English teachers. So we would drive all the way out to Meacham, sometimes drive back, just bitching about high school teaching and stuff like that. It's just hilarious. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so it's really been a privilege. Like Eileen mentioned, the first production, she played and sang all of the songs. And then knowing that that was not going to be possible forever, in fact, even the next production, it was not going to be possible. I did several rewrites so that the actors became the musicians and the actors as well. And so the second production, which is what this version is based on, came from those changes. Okay, so moving right along, I want to introduce you to Marcel Petit, who was the original character of Tom, who is an adopted brother of this family. And Marcel is just going to come up and read a monologue. In this scene, Sarah has kind of roamed the farm and kind of looked out for people and just to try to find out what's been going on. And she meets up with Tom back at this fort near a copse of trees. And Tom is just spending time at this old fort. Tom is the anchor of the family in many ways, and he is the one who's actually running the day-to-day operations of the farm, as you'll sort of see. All right, Marcel Petit.
Hello, everyone. I guess I can move this up. I wasn't saying anything. I first want to say thank you to Eileen and Daniel. I have to admit, when he phoned me and asked me to play Tom, I was first amazed that he asked me. And then when I found out that I got to sing a song, I was more amazed that they were going to allow me to sing. And the good thing about that song, there was a lot of storm happening, so we really didn't hear me. And I still remember Angus asking me if I wanted to go for some lessons, and I laughed at him. I said, yeah, it's not going to help anything. But I got to sing with Eileen, which was amazing, and because I love everything she does, and so that was a thrill. And I got to work with Daniel and a lot of amazing actors that really helped me with my craft, because I was still early and still really early in theater and acting. So it was amazing to work with Mark and Kate and get a lot of learning from a lot of them, and Cheryl Jack, which was a thrill to work with her because she was so much fun. But I'm excited to be here tonight. I wasn't expecting. Daniel somehow stalked me and found me, and here I am, and I love it. So I'm going to try it, and I'm glad he told me what this scene was about, because I'm like, do I have to tell him what the scene's about? So I started reading, but what's the scene about? So now I know, and gladly I didn't sing this part, so you won't get to hear me sing ever. But I'm glad 100 people got stuck in a theater and had to listen to me. That's on my resume now. And I'm going to try and make sure I can see. I was in the truck just kind of scouting around the spring after Dad died. Seeing how much water we had. I grabbed some soil. So we see what we were going to plant. Watch the hawks. Hawks come way earlier now than they used to. Global warming. Anyway, I went by that little costly trees and saw the fort, or like what was left of it. And I was just like staring at it. The trees look huge compared to what they were. They've grown so much that they pulled the planks up with them. And I'm looking at it. And I'm realizing that I'm not going to be able to drive the truck back to the yard and tell Dad what kind of shape things are in and talk about what we should plant and where. I found myself smiling, crying at the same time, like grinning really wide and just blubbering like a baby, snot and tears and drool like a fucking baby. I mean, I built this thing when I was what, 9, 10? It was the best place. Every kid should have a fort. And that's when I started getting older. It was a good place to make out with the girls. I'd have the odd bottle of gin or whatever Dad was kicking around that he wouldn't miss. And he hated gin. So I learned to like gin because he hated it.
Oh, there's one funny story. I was well into the show, into the run, I guess. Marcel had come up to me before and he said, just we had this moment, and he said, his hands on my shoulders, I'm so glad that there were 2 songs by the Carpenters that I had to sing. And he said, I'm so glad that you sing that song because it helps me with my cue. So the play starts and he's across the stage from me and I'm looking right at him and who started the wrong Carpenter song? And I could see him seething and his eyes just looking at me like I swear I'm going to kill you. I'm like, well, you shouldn't have said anything. What an influence. Sorry about that. So you did a beautiful job and it was a pleasure working with you. This is the title track. This is called Whirlwind. It's barely a breeze, trembling like the trees. Made it through the spring, made it through the summer. I don't know about the fall. It's only the air, but it's got me by the hair. And it's pushing me around, trying to take me to the ground, but I'm trying to stand tall. And it's blowing, blow, keep on blowing. Send me to places I've never seen before. And it's blowing, blow, keep on blowing. Send me to everywhere, throw me to here and there. Take what I want and make it all there. Wash me away. There's lightning every day. I don't want to feel the pain. Memories like a hurricane, but I'm drowning in it all. And it's blowing, blow, keep on blowing. Send me to places I've never known before. And it's blowing, blow, keep on blowing. Send me to everywhere, throw me to here and there. Take what I want and make it all there. I don't even need it. I won't even feel it. You can't even see it, 'cause it's only a breeze.
So that kind of concludes the formal programming for the evening. Once again, I want to thank Macdonald Robinson, Alyssa, Playwrights Canada Press, and everyone else for coming and sharing this time with us. We were gonna open up to questions, if anybody has any questions, for a quick Q&A. If there are none, then we'll hang around and sign copies if you like, stuff like that. So, oh, there's a question.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm just wondering, are the songs from the show recorded?
Oh, we should do that. We should talk about that.
We should talk
You
about
go
that.
right ahead.
Because I have all her other seating, so I need these songs too.
So I'm delighted that in the book, the music is included in the book, the actual sheet music. And there's a link where there's just to a demo version. I'm working hopefully in the new year. I will have a chance. I'll have a chance to record them in the studio and I'd like to
Nice.
put them out there.
Nice.
But aren't they on
They're on the link,
there's a link
but again, it's a
in the
demo.
book that you can, it's just a demo, but there's a link in the book where you can listen to the 4 songs, just demo recording by it.
Yeah, by Eileen and Greg helped.
Okay, there you go. So there's your
Thank
certain question. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Why don't you buy a copy? And we'll find out. Oh, there you go. Well, you know what? You can decide if the ending is happy or not.
Yeah.
It certainly should be. There are several theaters in the province, amateur and professional, who've never done a production of Blow In, for lots of good reasons too. I'm not blaming them for not doing it. COVID was a huge reason. So my job is to get the word out and get them to kind of take another interest or a new interest in the play. So you never know. Yes.
I want to know why the dad kept buying gin.
You know, he was dead, so he couldn't even explain why he bought the gin. He didn't even like it, so I don't know what it's doing in the house. It might have been his wife, I don't know.
Not a problem. In terms, you talk a lot about how you've rewrote it, you went through another draft. Like, are you going through and kind of editing lines, or are you kind of starting from scratch, going through it again and reimagine? How much work is each redraft?
The first 2, maybe even 3 drafts are quite thorough redraftings. Virtually every draft after that is tweaking an aspect of the play. So it's really hard to change everything all at once. So I sometimes categorize, I have to name and date every draft. So I have a catalog every single draft. And what I do is, if the draft is very similar to the last one, I might call it draft 3A, 3B. And then if there's a significant change, I will jump to draft 4. So, I mean, I've written plays that have had 15 or 20 drafts and then sub drafts and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how it can we. And of course, it changes once you hear actors reading it for the first time. Then there's a huge leap. So that happens a lot too. Question?
Yep.
Can you just talk a little bit more about when you hear it? What types of things happen?
There's several things that happen when you hear actors around a table read your play for the first time. You've been hearing it in your head or saying it out loud as you write. And you may have even read a couple of scenes with a friend or partner like Melanie or somebody, just to try a couple of things out. But the first time around a table, there's just a leap in tension. There's a leap in expectation. And that leap keeps happening every time you put it into a bigger and broader environment, which the ultimate leap is in front of a paying audience for the first time. And oftentimes in theater, that is supposed to be the last time. You're not touching the play after that, but actually that should be an occasion to do real rewrites. When a paying audience who pay $50 a ticket don't care who you are, don't know who you are, and just sit there and go, entertain me, that's a huge change from you sitting around a table or sitting in front of even an invited public reading. There's no comparison to what those two things bring to you. So each one teaches you something new about the play. The first time you have actors around and you hear it out loud, the biggest change has to do with things like timing, meaning, clarity, those really basic questions that up until then you took for granted things might be clear. You took for granted that this scene made sense compared to the last scene, that things are consistent. And so you hearing it, you ultimately can answer several of those questions yourself, but actors will ask those questions. So I need to know why does he do this when this happened earlier or something like that? And you go, oh, I don't know. Those types of questions come up immediately. So that begins to change the logic of the play and certainly the need for clarity, because ultimately they are representing the audience as they are taking it in for the first time. Yes.
I have a question about dementia. I don't know anything about it. No one in my family has ever experienced it. But I was an impression of memory loss. Is it like the way the character expressed it, not seeing the character, seeing someone else or having this, how dementia expresses or some of it like that?
When I started writing the play and knew I was writing about dementia, I knew people. I have no one directly related to me, like a direct family member, but I have close relatives who've suffered from dementia. At St. Paul's, we interact with people with dementia all the time. And interestingly, the research I did was a combination of asking people who had close contact with a family member and stuff like that, and reading. And the reading was widespread. There was clinical reading, which does not help, right? The clinical reading is not where you want to go if you're writing a piece of art, right? So may inhabit that knowledge, but it's hard to translate that onto the page. And I really, even in my writing, most of the writing was in asking those questions. Writing is actually just about asking questions, asking good questions. You don't come up with the answers. And in dementia, I wanted to reveal aspects of it that I learned from people and from my own experiences without telling people, well, it's this, or this is what it's like, or something like that. And interestingly, in the second production of Rostern, someone who saw the play sent a note to the Station Arts saying it was the most thoughtful or accurate depiction of what dementia actually is. And I was really surprised at that, because I was creating a piece of art around questions around dementia, not kind of saying what it was. For me, there's a question in the play, and I think ultimately that's what the question is thematically in the play. And the question is that Sarah asks at near the end of the play as she sees her mom disappearing further and further. So there is this gradual disappearance of her mom, and she asks this question: where do they all go? And in that question is this idea of, where does all the memory and imagination and thought and personality, all of those things that we cherish in people, where do they disappear to, considering that the person is still here? And so that was ultimately what I was fascinated by and wanted, in a spiritual kind of metaphysical way, to explore, as much as it was an actual clinical event. The things that actually play out in the play in terms of how they deal with them, how they deal with their mom, are real things. The way that paranoia and anger and rage creeps into the world of dementia. We think of dementia as a memory loss, but there's the fears that start to manifest in people are very real. I mean, imagine being in a hospital and seeing all these strange faces who come at you all the time, and you can't remember them, you don't know them. It is terrifying. And watching people who have some memories still, who are able to tell you, oh, I'm sorry. I had a conversation last week with a woman who was talking to me, and I asked her a couple of questions, and she said, oh, I'm sorry. That part of me is gone. I can't talk about that anymore. I don't know where it is. So the consciousness of knowing that these parts of you have left And yet also having it disappear in front of you is just, it's so gut-wrenching to think of. So I was trying to capture some of that. Is it there? Maybe in parts, and yet trying to identify the way that families come together or break apart because of these types of stresses in their lives. Oh, okay, one more question.
When you added music, did you realize that in the medical profession, discovering that the only thing that brings people back from dementia is music?
I did read, and in fact, there's even a couple of documentaries that I watched about the effects of music and music related things. Sometimes it's things like numbers, sometimes it's these really amazing things that people lock onto and can recite from rote from when they were children, even though they are in full dementia. So yeah, music is a huge contributor to that. All right, well, thank you so much for coming. Great conversations. I'm happy to have them anytime, so feel free to stick around. We are going to the Thirsty Scholar after. If any of you want to join us to hang out at the Thirsty Scholar, I've got a couple of tables booked, and come and we can hang out, have a drink. I need to eat. I haven't had supper, and I'll sit and drink a beer with you and chat even more. Thank you so much.
I'll just say, sorry, I'll just say a quick sincere thank you to Daniel Macdonald, Eileen Laverty, Marcel Petit, and everyone at Playwrights Canada Press. They have said they'll stick around and sign some books, which we've got on the table there. Thanks for joining us and have a great night.
Maybe.